My friends, welcome back to another session. Today we're going to talk about the new report that just came out from the Associated Press concerning the low fertility rates in the U.S. It's not looking good, my friends. I think America is going to join the rest of the world with a declining population, or they might not. Because we know, though, there's only two ways to solve a declining population. One, massive increase in young people immigrating to the country. Or, number two, incentivize women to have kids. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, my friends. The declining population worldwide. Yes, we've spoken about this before, but I think it's only now that it's really starting to hit the U.S., the severity of the problem.
America's fertility rates are hovering around historic lows, with approximately 1.6 births per woman over her lifetime. This is below the level needed to sustain the population, which is 2.1 births per woman.
We're actually projecting that about 1 in 4 young adults today will never have kids. There are plenty of us out there who are kind of concerned about the falling birth rate, both for kind of its impact on people's ordinary lives, as well as for the ways in which it'll affect our economy and our government.
And we will support baby bonuses for a new baby boom. How does that sound? That sounds pretty. I want a baby boom.
Our population will, in the not too distant future, start to decline. And so that's why this is an issue for governments and for the economy, and politicians are starting to pay attention.
The concern here in the U.S. is that if we see kind of dramatic declines in fertility, we will eventually see also kind of a drag on our economy and our capacity to cover all sorts of government programs like Medicare and Social Security.
Our population is sort of getting older on average. And what that means is we have the baby boomers who are, in their older age years. So they are drawing Social Security, and they also have quite a bit of medical and care needs. And so the question is, how will we care for our aging population?
It's very hard in modern U.S. society to combine work and having kids. We have very little by way of support to families in this country.
This is where the problem come in. Women complain that they want to work, they want to be in the workplace, but they can't be in the workplace and have babies. And this is the biggest issue that we're having in today's environment. Women think that they can have it all. Someone sent me a video regarding this issue, and it was posted on one of these feminist websites that sort of supports the whole female agenda.
They can't have it all because you can't. First of all, you don't have kids, right? So this is, some bullcrap line. Wait till you have kids. How are you? I want to know how you're going to have it all. If you're a full-time worker and you have a child, how are you a full-time mom? Well, I'm going to hire help. Then you're not a full-time mom. You made a decision to prioritize one thing over the other, and you handed your kid to either a nanny or an au pair or daycare or something to do the jobs that you otherwise would be doing as a mom if you weren't climbing that career ladder and weren't prioritizing work over family, right?
All right, so we're not going to talk about her because we all know what she's doing here, right? Like, we all get what she's trying to do. But I do want to talk about this idea for a second, because a couple of years ago, I said that I don't take advice from men, even the most successful men, because the advice never pertains to women. It just doesn't resonate with women because they don't have the same lived experience. And this is why no one would ever say to a man that you can't have it all. They wouldn't tell a man that you can't have that business you want to start. You can't be a high-powered career man and have kids. You can't do both and be good at both. That's impossible. We don't say that to men. If you took what she said and replaced woman with man, it would sound crazy. Men, you can't have it all. Not with kids. You can't be a full-time worker and be a full-time dad. It's not possible. You'd be handing your kids off to who? Who would have your kids? The nanny? The au pair? Daycare? The mom? You're not a full-time dad if you do that. You can't do both. You can't have it all, Dad. Right? See, we don't say that to dads. We never say that to dads, but we say it to moms all the time. And we say it so often that we're constantly asking them, how do you do it all? How do you balance it? What are you doing that makes this possible? And then when they tell you they have daycare or a nanny, we shame them for it. We don't do that to men. And this is exactly why I don't take advice from men, because men don't have the same lived experience as women. They can move across the country to start a company and still be considered a good dad when their kids are on the other side of the country. Still be considered a good dad. And so until that changes, until men are held to the same exact standards as women are in relationships and parenting, I'm not going to take their advice. Also, just for good measure, we're not taking her advice either. Like, we all know what she's doing here. She's pandering, and we're not going to listen to her.
And my response was simply, We don't expect to have it all. We don't have to tell men that. Men are smart enough to know that they can't have it all. None of us can have it all. No gender. The reality of it is, if you want it, you got to realize that you might be able to have it all, everything you want, but you can't have it all at the same time. And this is the problem that a lot of women just don't understand. They want it all, and they want it all at the same time. That's why they struggle with trying to maintain a lifestyle that is so hectic, because they're out there trying to do it all at the same time, and then they cry when they break down. You cannot be a boss babe woman running a Fortune 500 company and be a successful mom at the same time. It's impossible. Something is going to suffer. You cannot be a great mom, a great CEO, and a great wife, and have a great body. Something has to give, because the demand that is required to be a powerful CEO will take you away from your home without a doubt. You can't be pumping iron and taking care of yourself 24/7. Something is going to suffer. That's what women just don't get. So it seems like in the majority of communities where birth rates are low, the common theme is women complaining they either don't have time to have kids or it's too expensive to have kids. So let's look at some of the ways that different countries are trying to solve this problem. Because if you think the US is low, let's take a look at Japan. Listen to this solution Japan has.
Tokyo just made work more exciting. Want more than just Friday feels? Keep watching. Starting April 2025, Tokyo's public workers get a 4-day work week. Yep, you heard that right. 4 days on, 3 days off. The city says more free time could spark romance and, baby making. Less overtime means more Netflix, and maybe more Netflix and chill. Experts hope couples will trade late nights at the office for late nights elsewhere. Birth rates in Japan hit a record low, under 720,000 babies in 2024. Tokyo's tweak is a sexy experiment to boost those numbers and happiness levels. Could a long weekend be the secret to a baby boom?
Well, sounds like a good idea. A 4-day work week might work. Let me know what you guys think. But I don't see that solving anything. People might have more fun, not necessarily hooking up. Because Japanese people are not very, how should I say the word, hot? It's a very cold community. These gentlemen seem to have the solution for it.
Only one seat is here, guys. Why? No wonder the birth rates are declining here in this country, bro. They're all depressed, all alone.
I could solve Japan's birth problems within 1 week. I just bring 1,000 Turkish men here.
It's fixed, easy.
I can bring some Italians. Mediterranean guys will.
Yeah, we always have high testosterone, eh?
So yeah, these guys say, hey, Japanese men ain't laying the pipe. That's the problem. Low testosterone levels. Wow, that might be the problem. Bring in some expats to regenerate and invigorate the population, stimulate the testosterone levels.
The Japanese government is constantly sharing ideas to fix the birth rate, like the possibility of legalizing polygamy. Most recently, the Tokyo governor announced a plan for free child daycare starting from next September. It should boost work-life balance and enables women to go back to work and earn money instead of staying at home if that's their choice. Some companies are hesitant to hire women over a certain age because they're afraid women will focus more on their families. So hopefully they can't use that excuse when free childcare exists. The total fertility rate is on a global decline even in Nordic countries with the strongest family-friendly policies. It's due to generational and lifestyle changes, but Japan's declining rate is especially dramatic because of the stressful work culture. Change begins in the workplace, but companies are only moving backwards. There's a very popular Japanese company that used to boast their fully remote policy, but they demanded return to office this year despite all protests, especially from parents who were able to work from home and look after their kid.
Yeah, and this is where the problem comes in. Multinational companies, big companies in general don't want to give up their workers to solve the social problem. Profits before babies. That's pretty much what they're saying. And of course, women can't afford to just stay home because wages haven't increased. So this is the problem that we're having, is that we cannot reverse the trend of taking women out of the workplace so that they can and provide for the growth of the economy. We can't reverse that because it's not as if wages are going to spike considerably if you want to have a kid. And I think that's probably the best plan. If a couple is willing to have kids and the woman stays home, the man's salary should increase twofolds in order to compensate for the woman staying at home. I think that's the only solution. But then we're back to the same problem that feminism fought for, right? See, we've come full circle. The man stays home, the woman works. Is that what we need to go back to in order to solve the declining population?
AP 4 weeks. This was in the AP 4 weeks ago about birth rate declining and population decline.
Says surveys show young Japanese are increasingly reluctant to marry or have children, discouraged by bleak job prospects, the high cost of living, which rises at a faster pace than salaries, and a gender-biased corporate structure or corporate culture that adds an extra burden only on women and working mothers. Japan's population of more than 125 million is projected to fall by about 30% to 87 million by 2027. That's crazy.
That's Japan. But let's look a little closer to home. Let's look at Italy.
According to experts, Italy's decreasing population is the most pressing issue that needs to be addressed. They say that the future of the country very much depends on that and on how to reverse the trend. For the first time in the country's history since 2015, Italy's population has lost around 1 million residents, and the forecast for the next 30 years looks green. In other words, not only will the overall population shrink, but the overall number of young people as well will be reduced significantly. And if that is confirmed, would have a huge impact on the country's economic growth.
Italy has the highest share of people over 65 years old among all EU member states. And if the trend continues, it will be very hard to sustain both the pension and the health systems. But what is the reason behind this?
Italy has the lowest female labour participation rate in Europe. It currently stands at around 57%. In Germany, instead, it stands at around 75%. And in Sweden, it's above 81%. Why am I mentioning that? Well, because several studies have proved that if women are able to work, they're going to have more children. Not being able to work instead makes women less secure from a financial point of view and doesn't encourage them to start a family.
What he said didn't make any freaking sense. You're saying put more women into the workplace so they could make more money to have more kids? How the hell does that make sense? When all the countries that have put women into the workplace are suffering worse, i.e. Japan, South Korea, suffering worse from women who are not having any kids because they focus more on career. Throw more women into the workplace, wages come down, more and more people make less money. Sometimes politicians just have no freaking clue. Look at freaking South Korea, the worst of all, the worst declining populations worldwide. They don't have a problem with women in the workplace. Japan is trying to get women out of the workplace.
In this apartment in South Korea, these parents are celebrating the arrival of their first child. They're taking plenty of photos of this special moment. Their daughter's been the centre of attention for the past 2 months.
Look, it's the ultrasound of our baby's feet.
But the Kims need help. They've just applied for a recently introduced government child-rearing grant. The grant of 500 to 700 euros per month for 2 years is the latest attempt to address South Korea's growing demographic crisis. Many blame the low birth rate on the high cost of living, which has soared in recent years.
Having your first child is so expensive. There are so many things to buy, way more than you expect. A pram, a cot, and even smaller things like a diaper bin. The costs add up quickly.
In general, in South Korea, raising a child today costs between 200 and 300,000 euros. The government subsidies are just 1/10 of that sum.
Young families are becoming a rarity in South Korea, where the birth rate is the lowest in the world at just 0.7. In France, the rate is 1.8. That means there are far fewer children in education.
Today, a teacher has around 10 to 11 children in their care. Before, even during nap time, this classroom was full of about 30 children. Now the number of children is so low that it doesn't seem worth the bother to rearrange desks between classes.
느껴지는 것 같아요. 이전에 비해서.
In South Korea, schools are closed in the afternoon, so children's families must look after them. In its male-dominated society, that means women are expected to be childminders. And that's turned many women off the idea of having children.
Women often have to quit their jobs to take care of their kids in the afternoon, and that affected their long-term job prospects. But the government subsidies and extracurricular activities in the afternoon are helping the school try to change the way it looks at motherhood.
The low fertility rate is also blamed on the country's brutal work culture. On average, South Koreans work 155 hours more per year than people in other developed countries. These government ads highlight the joys of family life.
모두의 배려에서 시작됩니다. 오늘 당신의 배려를 보여주세요.
But a decent career is seen as a sign of success in a highly competitive society. Unlike previous generations, many working women now refuse to sacrifice their careers to become full-time housewives.
Italy, what do you have to say about this? Women do not want to leave the workplace once they start making that money to become wives and mothers. This shows you a very clear problem. Whatever choices you give women, it is still going to be a problem. Let's go back to the U.S.
When birth rates fall, it affects the entire economy.
One of the big drivers of economic growth is just having more people in your society, more consumers, more workers, more taxpayers in East Asia and countries like Japan, for instance, that have seen below replacement fertility for a long while and are now actually just shrinking demographically, both in terms of the Japanese economy, there's been stagnation, but also in terms of the Japanese government having greater difficulty kind of paying the tab for the challenges they face in terms of particularly supporting an older population that is relying to an important degree on the Japanese government.
With the worker to retiree ratio shrinking, Social Security and similar programs could struggle to remain financially sustainable.
You know, it's amazing how so many people think that we don't have a declining population. For so long, there has been this narrative push that, oh, the world is becoming overpopulated and the resources that we have can't sustain us. That is not the case, my friends. That was never the case, actually. The case has always been that more and more people actually flock to cities. But more importantly, we waste so much of our resources. You have an idea how much food is thrown away in the U.S. alone? The amount of items that we make that are disposable. Nothing we make these days are designed to actually be repaired. It's insane. All the clothing, the food that spoils, that isn't perfect in the supermarket, all of that is just thrown away. That is the biggest problem, is our waste, the amount of resources that we waste. And the massive amount of people who exist in a population move to cities. Look at all the rural areas and all the amount of land that is available in the U.S. Way out in the countryside. No one is using that land. Vast areas of land and rural countryside, little villages and towns, population 400, 2,000, 500, 8,000. It's ridiculous because everybody moved to big cities. So cities become overpopulated. People spending astronomical amounts of money in cities. I don't know how you're going to reverse that because that's where the jobs are and that's where all the opportunities are, the infrastructures are, because governments build those places in order to attract the young generation.
The Social Security trustees put out a report about how long they expect Social Security to stay solvent. I think the current estimation is 2033. So people are worried about that. What's interesting, though, is that the lever that we are trying to force on people now is people should have more children so that then eventually 20 years from now or so, we'd have more workers who would then be paying into it. It doesn't seem like a very efficient system to me because it doesn't solve the short-term solvency problem.
But that's how Social Security has always worked. It's a Ponzi scheme. If there's no young people paying into it, the old people will suffer. But it's not only just money. Young people are needed to help the older generation because it doesn't make any sense for me to have somebody helping me get up the stairs. If I'm ever bedridden, I can't have another 98-year-old woman trying to help me. I need a young, able-bodied person helping me do these tasks. Thankfully, by the time I reach that age, the robots will be taken over. But you see the problem that we still have. The young generation is not there to sustain us with money.
Leaders across the U.S. political spectrum have proposed ways to address the birth rate decline.
You've got Elon Musk, who is essentially having the ear of the president and in the White House. And he's very much interested not only in increasing birth rates, but this notion that the best and brightest should really be reproducing. And then you have someone like J.D. Vance.
So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America.
Who have, I would say, a more sort of religiously or conservatively oriented bent about this. So it's not just about increasing births, but it's about increasing births within sort of a traditional family. So marital status is really important to this group.
We had the Democrats pushing really hard for an expanded child tax credit. Now the Republicans come out with something called a baby bonus. That's what the New York Times reported. That would be $5,000 allegedly at the time a child is born. This is a pretty common policy in other countries that there's some extra child allowance, child tax credit, baby bonus sent to parents when they have a newborn. Having a newborn is expensive.
Both political parties have proposed policies that provide money to families either in the form of direct cash or tax refunds. But experts say one-off proposals are not likely to move the needle for families.
The kinds of financial incentives or benefits that we're providing just really aren't enough to change the calculus of a trade-off of bringing a child into one's household or family. That's an 18-year commitment. It's not just a one-year cost.
In particular, the $5,000 baby bonus that's being sort of bandied about is not likely to budge fertility rates.
It blows my mind that the government is willing to put billions more, if not trillion, more into the war effort around the world, rather than give it to mothers in the country in order to increase the population. Just think about that for a bit. Just let it marinate. That's the society that you are dealing with right now. Countries are more concerned about bombing the shit out of each other, killing each other, rather than trying to increase the population of kids.
The United States lacks key policies that other comparable nations have that could potentially encourage family formation, such as federal paid parental leave, flexible work, and some fertility care access. The U.S. offers less cash and services than the average OECD country. However, it is above average when it comes to providing tax breaks for families with kids.
Research suggests to us that these are family studies that markedly increasing like the child tax credit can have a modest but noteworthy effect on births. What we estimate is that if we were to increase, for instance, the child tax credit to $4,500 per child, it's about $2,000 right now. That would lead to an increase in fertility of between 3 and 10%. On the one hand, it's a pretty modest number. On the other hand, if you kind of look at that effect over the course of the century, we're talking about millions and millions of extra kids being born because of this additional financial incentives.
But even wealthy countries with stronger social programs continue to struggle with low birth rates.
France really has been spending a lot on pro-family policies. They now have one of the higher fertility rates in Europe. It's still not above 2. It's still low. How much of their policy emphasis actually helped sort of stall out the decline so they're in better shape than some other countries is a really difficult empirical question to answer. But I do think it might be a glimmer of, optimism on the policy front, suggesting if we really do a lot to support families, we at least might be able to stall out the birth rate decline.
Many governments have attempted to influence or even limit their citizens' family formation practices, such as Japan's recent pronatalist campaigns or China's one-child policy. But studies have found that these policies may have unintended consequences.
It's hard to imagine a scenario where the government can say to people, well, we just really need you to have kids because it's important for our country. Sort of a take one for the team, patriotic kind of exhortation. Like, that's not probably going to happen. They've tried that in China. They're trying it in Japan. They try it in Italy. They try it in Hungary. It doesn't actually work.
America's birth rate used to be higher, but it was partly driven by unintended pregnancies, especially among teenagers.
We have actually spent years, decades, and millions of dollars from the federal government trying to reduce our teen pregnancy rate, which was much higher than other industrialized countries. And so I think that's a good news story. The downside is births at older ages have not risen enough to offset the declines we're seeing at these very young ages. And so that has driven our overall fertility rate lower, although we all are seeing increases in births to women in their 30s and even in their 40s.
So I think this timing issue is also another question. Has this sort of delay in adulthood, the delay delay in people feeling like they can find a partner, they can afford a house, is all of that pushing childbearing to such a late age that people are going to wind up having fewer children than they intend or than they would like. And that raises a policy question. Is there anything policy can do about that to make people feel like they don't have to wait until their 30s to get started having a family?
That's the major problem. We have told women, go and have your fun in your early years, be a hoe, have a great time, work on your career, and then when you hit your late 20s, early 30s, when you're almost middle age, then you can start looking at having kids, settling down. When you're less attractive to the other person who will actually provide you the seed for the kids. Freeze your eggs. None of this message here that I just watched was geared towards the nuclear family. Do you realize that they actually highlighted 2 women with a baby? They almost demonized the way the vice president is pushing the nuclear family. It was all done in a negative light. You know what? I'll replay it right here.
About this. So it's not just about increasing births, but it's about increasing births within sort of a traditional family. So marital status is really important to this group.
It's a pretty common policy in other countries that there's some extra child allowance, child tax credit, baby bonus sent to parents when they have a newborn. Having a newborn is expensive.
So no, you got to understand that this isn't helping the situation, because it's not just enough to have kids. We also have to work on the type of kids that we're producing. Kids that grow up with a well-rounded mind, a mother and a father in the home, kid that's able to understand both sexes and be an asset in the society. Not a half man, half woman type of child, because those are not the ones that are having kids. Those are the ones that are saying, yeah, I'm confused. I don't think I'll have a child. I'm just going to have fun for myself. Conservatives have more babies. We know this. It's neither here nor there. It's just that's the way it is. Because conservative people see the nuclear family as a thing. Anyway, my friends, listen, I don't want to make this too long. Let's have your views in the comment section. Subscribe. Of course, like this video on the way out. We have to realize that we are in a serious situation as a society, because you have to now add AI into the mix and realize that we're going to have a double whammy coming up shortly. For all of my mature audiences, this will not be our problem. But within the next 30 to 40 years, oh man, this is going to be a major issue. Major, major. So my friends, subscribe, book a session, and I will see you tomorrow. All right? Until next time, remember, whenever in doubt, always, always ask an older man. See you soon. Cheers.